So we are here with Vini, Miss Vini Goyal, for welcome to the Green Country podcast. And you are in Baku for COP29 event. So we would like to know you better. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, it's been a pleasure to get to know you and the rest of the team.
It's our pleasure.
I feel like we've really connected even in the short time that we've spent together, and I'm excited for this conversation. So my name is Vini, like I said. I am 24 years old. I was born in India, but we moved over to the UK when I was 3 years old, so I've spent most of my life actually in the UK now. I'm at COP as the youth representative of the Brahma Kumaris, which is a spiritual organisation. I'm sure we'll get into that a bit more later. Also a member of the UNEP Faith for Earth Youth Coalition, which again as a representative of the Brahma Kumaris. And professionally I'm in the ESG space. So yeah, it's all around me.
Great. And what was your occupation at the organization?
So I'm a youth representative at the Brahma Kumaris, professionally as a auditor.
Great. So, Winnie, I would like to ask your impression about Azerbaijan at first time, and you have been already more than a week here, right? How they evolved during the time?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it was the buildings, the architecture that really caught my eye, and I found it to be really unique. I've got a lot of photos in my camera roll from just the buildings. Also, the climate reminded me a lot of back home. The way that it's quite unpredictable, I'm sure you know. But then as time went on, my vision kind of shifted, and I could see the actual friendliness and how welcoming the people were, and now I think that's what's really gonna stay with me. And it's kind of similar to like how we see people as well nowadays. It's like externally we see everything, right, and then you actually get to know them. So yeah, in a similar way I've gotten to know Baku.
That's nice to hear that from you. And my next question will be, what do you think? What are the biggest misconceptions about climate change and sustainability among people worldwide?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The biggest misconception, I think, it does vary a lot country to country. In the global north, which is actually responsible for 90% of greenhouse gas emissions, I think the biggest misconception is that people think that we still have time to deal with climate action when we really don't. And if we want to live in a carbon neutral world by 2050, then each of us, and that's including me as much as everyone else, needs to take more responsibility for our actions and the impact that it has on the world. In line with this, one of our initiatives at the Brahma Kumaris environmental initiative is to promote sustainable lifestyles, and we say that when I change, the whole world changes.
Exactly, that's nice quote. And I would like to ask, what do you think about the initiatives in Azerbaijan? And which of them stood out as more eco-friendly and sustainable to you?
Yeah, the one that really stood out has been the public transport. I think sustainability in transportation has clearly been a priority within the framework for COP in Azerbaijan. I read that there's more than 150 electric vehicles as part of the car fleet, which is amazing to hear. The shuttle buses are all free, and there's designated bus lanes, so it's not just something that's tokenized and kind of done, but not really fully done. You can tell that it's something that really promoted.
So great. We are trying to be more eco-friendly and sustainable, and our country has done a lot for that. But there are a lot of things to do for that, exactly. And you are the participant of COP29. I would like to learn what have been your key takeaways from this global event.
Yeah, thank you for that question. As simple as it sounds, my key takeaway has actually been to listen more and to really think about how I listen, and also to listen to everyone. This has given me the opportunity to hear voices that I would never be able to hear otherwise, including those from indigenous communities, how their relationship is with nature, and the power of storytelling, I think, can really shift mindsets and touch our hearts. We've been running a project called Messages from the Heart during our time at COP29. So Messages from the Heart, heart standing for hope, empathy, action, and resilience at COPs. So the way that it works is that so there will be a panel, and everyone will embody one of those virtues or qualities if you have it. So then you get a chance to step away from the titles that you're playing. I'm this person, I'm that person, and then you just stick within that. And then you start to filter the conversations, right? But when you embody something else, and it allows you to connect from the heart. So being able to listen to those stories, I've really learned how to connect and build relationships more authentically.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah. Showing practice is also very powerful. And so how do you think COP29 will shape the future of climate change policies worldwide?
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's in more than one ways, but one that I've seen more and I'm hoping for is a change in the language of climate policies to make them more inclusive for faith communities, youth and children, women, these different, you can call them minority groups almost. And language is such an important way of engaging with these communities in the climate space. Like I was saying, I've had the chance to meet a lot of diverse people at COP. So it's really made me realize how important it is for everyone to be included, and I'm hopeful that that's something that we can integrate in policy making.
Yeah, hopefully. And I would like to ask, what specific contributions has Azerbaijan made during COP29 that you found very impactful?
Yeah, I think mobilizing the young people from universities to be volunteers. I think there's like 3,000 volunteers, and we actually did an interview with the head of the volunteers to get to know their side of the story. And I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to you or because I'm in Baku. It's something that I felt, I know my whole team has felt, and a lot of the other people that I've spoken to at COP, and it really shows the impact that positive presence can have. They're not necessarily at those tables having those discussions, but just by being there and being so helpful, they create such an impact, and you can sense it in the environment. So yeah, I mean, even though it's my first COP and I don't have anything to compare it to, I can tell that it's something that's very different.
Thank you. And I would like to ask, from a spiritual perspective, what do you think there should be more at COPs, next COPs maybe?
Yeah, well, we've started to see this already, this concept of inner transformation and building up our inner resilience. But I think there's still capacity for us to build on that more, and to explore how interconnected the inner world is to the outer world. Another thing that we say at the Brahmakumaris is that all of the crises that we see externally and in nature are a reflection of the inner turmoil. So kind of doing more work to address the issue from its root.
Yeah, great. So as a youth representative from a spiritual organization, what do you think that you did at COP29 which were very impactful for the public?
Thank you so much. I think tangibly there are definitely things that we tried to do, which are having morning meditations and evening meditations for people at the COP, recognizing that, again, like I was talking about, the inner resilience, allowing people to empower themselves and kind of charge their batteries early in the morning and at the end of the day. So we would have morning meditations and again in the evening, and all of our side panels, as many as possible, we would start them with a moment of silence and reflection, because there's so little of that at the COP. And these things sound really small, but for those who experience them,
big effect.
yeah. and just things like handing out blessing cards to the volunteers and everyone who came to our exhibition. We had a lot of people come and ask if they were paid things, or they were really touched. But obviously it was all free, and there were a couple of experiences that I won't forget. And it was this one girl who came and she had a short conversation with one of our volunteers at the exhibition, and she started crying, and we thought something had gone wrong, but she just needed someone to recognize her and ask her how she was. That's kind of aside from the side events where we had interactive conversations.
Completely agree, and personally, I also think that spiritual events should be added as side events or main part to such formal events. It's very important to keep the balance. And thank you for contributing to COP29 for our country, for this contribution. And my last question, we are coming to the end of the podcast, would be, what is your message to the youth who are trying to act for climate change, and what can be their role in addressing climate change?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's something that's not just for young people, but for everyone to start with ourselves. And I think that's also been the theme of this podcast, something that I kind of keep repeating, but it's so important, and that's why I keep saying it. Quoting an economist from the World Bank, they said, adaptation cannot be an afterthought to development. Instead, by integrating it into policy thinking up front, governments can catalyze robust economic development. So the concept of inner resilience is, I think, the same applies to us, and making sure that we're ready for the climate change impacts that we're already starting to see in some parts of the world, and we're slowly going to see across the globe. Just making sure that mentally we're in a space where we can deal with that is really important.
Great speech. Thank you. And thank you for coming and contributing to our podcast. I'm sure your speech will raise awareness about spiritual part of formal events, and about of course, climate change, climate protection. Thank you for coming. We are grateful to you.
Thank you for your kind words.